Hello, good people. This is video one of this patterns start to our next unit. Our next unit is going to be dealing with sequences and series, which we don't know exactly what they are yet. But if you understand how to find patterns, then sequences and series might not be that bad of a unit for you. Excuse me. So what we need to do whenever we are looking for patterns, the more patterns we explore, the more patterns we try, the more the toolbox that you have to work with is going to be filled. So I want to do a lot of these with you. I'm going to ask you to do some with your partner and on your own. But the main idea here is we're looking for a pattern with the numbers. So we're going to start with numbers. We're going to get into shapes. And then we're going to find formulas to describe these patterns. That's kind of the goal of this unit. But let's start with something basic. I'm looking at four values in each of these examples, and we're going to start with example one. We're looking at four different values, and the question is, what's the pattern that gets me from the first term, and we're going to focus on number one here, the first term, which is 16, to the second term, which is 23? And the same thing, does it happen to get from 23 to 30? Like what's happening with these values to get from 30 to 27? And so one of the things that could help you is figuring out, as I go from the first, the second, to the third, to the fourth in sequence, are the numbers getting bigger or are the numbers getting smaller? Because if the numbers are increasing, if they're getting bigger, increasing numbers, or I guess I should say increasing terms, means that I'm either adding, and when I say adding, a positive, or we're multiplying, and we're multiplying a whole number. So those are the two possibilities. So I'm either adding a number and I see that there's a pattern to the number that I'm adding, or I'm multiplying. Well, here they kind of did some of the pre-work for us. They're saying we're adding 7 each time. So if I do 16 plus 7, I get 23. 23 plus 7, I get 30. 30 plus 7, I get 37. So what's going to be the fifth term then? Well, it's whatever I get when I add 37 plus 7, and I believe that would be 44. So that would be the fifth term of the sequence. So a sequence, as we'll describe it next week, a sequence is just an ordered list of terms. Like there's an order to this. 16 comes before 23, 23 comes before 30, 30 comes before 37, 37 comes 44, but there's a pattern to it, right? And so we're adding 7 each time. The question is, knowing that, can you find the 10th term? Well, you're just going to keep adding 7, right? So if you have your handy-dandy calculator, let's start with that. So I'm going to go to the home screen on my calculator here, and I'm going to start with 16, and I'm going to add 7, and I'm going to get enter. That's the second term. But here's the nice thing about the calculator. If you just say plus 7, it's going to take the previous answer you just got and add 7 to it. So if I do that, it's going to give me the third term. Here's a nice thing about the calculator. If you press enter, it's going to type the last operation you did. So if I just press enter, it's going to add 7 to the previous answer, which was 30. It's going to give me 37. That's the fourth term. Here's the fifth term that we found out. If you just keep pressing enter, sixth term, seventh term, eighth term, ninth term, 10th term. So my 10th term is 79. How do we figure that out? Because this is a sequence. A sequence is an ordered list of values or terms that have a pattern, and the pattern that we said is happening is we're adding 7 every time. And so we added until we got to the 10th term. And if I go back in time, remember we started with 16. This was the second. This was the third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, and 10th. You can't see it, but there it is, 79. That's how we did that. Pretty straightforward. We're just looking for patterns. Okay. So then when I look at number 2, I notice that this is a sequence or an ordered list of terms that also starts with 16. But this time, the second number is not bigger, it's actually smaller. And so what we can say is decreasing terms means that we're subtracting, or you can say that we're adding a negative, or we're dividing, or you can say we're multiplying by a fraction, right? Because when you multiply by, let's say, 1/2, it makes the number smaller. Or you can say we're dividing by 2. Both of those are the same thing. So I have, excuse me, decreasing values. 8 goes to 4, 4 goes to 2. And the question is, am I subtracting the same number every time? Or am I dividing by the same number every time? What's going on? I think, if I see this correctly, we are dividing by 2 each time, right? We're just taking half of it. So you can say we're dividing by 2 each time. You can say we're multiplying by 1/2 each time. 16 divided by 2 would give me to 8. 8 divided by 2 would give me to 1. Divided by 8. 8 divided by 2 would give me to 4. 4 divided by 2 would give me to 2. And 2 divided by 2 will give me to 1. So I just kept dividing by 2. Dividing by 2. Dividing by 2. Dividing by 2. Right? So then how do I find the 10th term? I can use my calculator. So I go back to my calculator, and I'm going to move out of the way. Let me move up here if I can. So let's clear it out. We started with 16. We're going to divide by 2. We're going to press enter, and this is the second term. This is the second number in that list, in that sequence, we call it. But if I just press divide by 2, remember I have to get the answer. It has to say ANS, so I just divide by 2 and press enter. This is going to be the third term in the sequence. Now I could just press enter, fourth term of the sequence, enter the fifth term of the sequence. That's the one we found, right? Fifth term. Press it again, sixth term, seventh term, eighth term, ninth term, 10th term. There's a 10th term of the sequence, 0.03125. So I'm going to write it in. Let's do it in the color that I wrote the other one in, 0.03125. I believe that was a number. It was. .03125. So we figured it out. By the way, there's a column over here that says what type. We're not going to worry about that yet. Let's just work on finding patterns first, and then we can label the patterns that we found later. So far we've done 2. Let's do one more, and then we'll pause, and we'll come back with the next video. What about number 3? Since it's there, we might as well do it. Number 3. How do I get from 25 to 21? From 21 to 17? From 17 to 13? What's happening? The numbers are getting smaller. That means we're either dividing or we're subtracting. Is there a number that I'm subtracting every time? Is there a number that I'm dividing by every time? Is there a pattern? What do you see? I believe we're subtracting 4 each time. So if we're subtracting 4 each time, 17 minus 4 is 13. 13 minus 4 is 9. And I got to the 5th term. Now we can just subtract 5 more times in order to get the 10th term that we need to fill in over here. So I'm going to get my calculator. 9 was the 5th term. Why don't I just start there? 9 was the 5th term. Minus 4. So this is going to give us the 6th term. Minus 4. This is going to give us the 7th term. Press enter. The 8th term. the 9th term. The 10th term, I believe, is negative 11. So negative 11 is the 11th term in this sequence. It's the 11th value if I follow this pattern. Pretty straightforward, right? So when we come back on the next video, I'll show you number 4 and number 9, which have a little spin on the pattern, but you should be able to capture what's going on.